Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to talk about something that's on a lot of our minds, whether it's for ourselves or for someone we care about, the early signs of dementia. I know this can be a really sensitive topic, so our goal here is just to give you clear, helpful information in the most supportive way possible. So let's get into it.
You know that feeling, right? You walk into a room and completely forget why you're there. Or a name that you know so well is just stuck on the tip of your tongue. We've all been there, and it's totally normal for a little flicker of worry to pop up. This explainer is really all about helping us figure out the difference between those everyday moments and the kinds of signs that might mean it's time to take a closer look.
So to really get started, what is dementia? What are we actually talking about here? Let's make sure we have a really clear definition.
Okay, so in simple terms, dementia is what happens when nerve cells in the brain get damaged and stop working the way they should. This causes a decline that's, more serious than just normal aging. And I think the most important thing to take away from this is that last part. It is not a guaranteed part of getting older. That's a huge point to remember.
And this chart here does a great job of showing the difference. It's not really about a single event, it's about a pattern. Forgetting where you parked your car but figuring it out later, that's pretty typical. But if you're constantly struggling to remember things you just learned, that's a different story. Same thing with making one bad decision versus a consistent pattern of poor judgment. The real key is how often it happens and how much it impacts daily life. All right, now we're getting to the heart of it. We're going to walk through the 10 most common early signs of dementia, all based on information from medical experts and organizations like the Alzheimer's Association. And to make this a little easier to digest, we've broken the signs down into two main groups. First up, we're going to look at changes that affect a person's thinking and their ability to just get through their day-to-day tasks. So the first sign is memory loss. But the key phrase here is that it's memory loss that affects daily life. This is so much more than just forgetting where you put your keys. We're talking about needing sticky notes for everything, or having to rely on your family to manage a schedule you've always handled on your own. It's that constant struggle with new information. The next sign has to do with things like planning and problem solving. Just think about all the little steps it takes to pay your bills on time, or even just to cook a meal you've made 1,000 times. For someone in the early stages of dementia, trying to keep track of all those steps or just concentrating on the details can become really, really overwhelming. Now, this one can be especially scary for people. Imagine suddenly not being sure how to get to the grocery store you've been going to for decades, or struggling to work the TV remote you use every single day. These are tasks that are supposed to be automatic, but now they take a ton of conscious, difficult effort. And this goes way beyond just forgetting what day it is. Someone with dementia might lose track of time in a much bigger sense, like confusing the seasons or not getting why an appointment for tomorrow isn't happening right this second. They might even find themselves somewhere and have absolutely no memory of how they got there. Okay, this is a sign that a lot of people don't really associate with dementia, but it is so important. The brain's ability to make sense of what the eyes are seeing can get weaker. This can make reading a real challenge, cause problems judging distance when you're walking, or, and this is a big one, make driving really unsafe because it's hard to tell the difference between colors or objects. Look, we all have moments where we can't find the right word, but for a person with dementia, that becomes a constant struggle. They might just stop in the middle of a sentence, totally lost, or they might call an object by the wrong name entirely. You might also start to notice that their handwriting or spelling is getting much worse. Here we go again. The key is the pattern. It's one thing to lose your wallet. It's something else entirely to put it in the freezer and then have no ability to think back and figure out where it could be. And this can be so frustrating for the person that sometimes they might start accusing others of stealing because they just can't imagine any other explanation. Okay, let's switch gears to our second group of signs. These are less about those cognitive tasks and more about shifts in a person's personality, their mood, and just how they interact with the world around them. A decline in judgment can show up in some really obvious ways. It could be financial. Maybe they're falling for phone scams or buying a bunch of stuff they don't need. It can also look like a noticeable drop in personal hygiene. Maybe someone who was always so put together just isn't keeping up with themselves anymore. When it becomes hard to follow conversations or keep up with activities, it kind of makes sense that someone might start to pull back. They might stop going to their weekly card game or family dinners, things they used to love. It's not really about being antisocial. It's often just a way to cope with the challenges they're facing. And finally, you might notice some really big changes in just who they are. A person who was always easygoing might suddenly become irritable or suspicious. They might seem anxious or depressed or get upset really easily. For families, these shifts in personality can honestly be one of the hardest things to handle.
So, after going through all of these signs, the big question is, now what? If you're feeling concerned either about yourself or someone you love, it's really about moving from that place of worry to a place of action.
I love this quote because it's such a powerful reminder. We shouldn't just brush off serious changes as, oh, they're just getting old. These signs are absolutely worth looking into, not just to see if it's dementia, but also to rule out other treatable conditions that can sometimes cause similar symptoms.
And really, the path forward can be broken down into these three pretty straightforward steps. First, just notice the signs and acknowledge the pattern. Second, have an open and compassionate conversation about it. And third, the most important one, consult a doctor. That's the step that brings clarity and opens the door to getting support.
And that's really the whole goal here. While we don't have a cure for most types of dementia yet, getting a diagnosis is not the end of the road. It's actually the beginning of a plan to manage symptoms, to potentially slow things down, and to focus on having the best possible quality of life for as long as possible.
So we'll end on this question because it really reframes the whole idea. It's not about confirming a fear. It's about seeking help, getting answers, and taking a truly positive step toward managing health and well-being. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.